This is Parallel Perspectives, an NRI podcast where curiosity meets courage. In this series, we explore the idea that true understanding doesn't live in certainty. It's revealed through contrast. Hosted by Nathan Trail, NRI's Chief Revenue Officer, we sit down with challengers, innovators, deep thinkers, and purposeful builders to unpack the paradoxes, trade-offs, and bold choices that shape how we live, lead, and grow.
The air smells faintly of sweat, red wine, and anticipation, while you likely are feeling glimpses of fear, adrenaline, and courage wrestling with one another. It's early in the morning, and you're surrounded by tens of thousands of people on centuries-old cobblestone streets in the narrow alleys of Pamplona, Spain. Just moments before chaos is released, you're staring down a herd of bulls, standing in the bullpen, and all of this is on purpose. Did I get that right?
You got it right, Nathan. It's definitely on purpose, and it's all about controlled risk and mayhem, a little bit of fun, but really challenging your fears. And that's the whole festival they're saying for men and running with the bulls in Pamplona. And it's quite a fitting time, right? It's July 7th through July 14th, 8 in the morning, and 7 bulls, 7 days to run. So it was a great time, but let's talk about it.
That's super cool. So here we go. On today's episode of Parallel Perspectives, we're diving into the future of medicine, precision, and purpose with a visionary leader who's reshaping the way we fight cancer. I'm honored to be joined by Anthony Johnson, co-founder, president, and CEO of Kodikaz, a trailblazing company pioneering zip code technology to deliver cancer treatments with unmatched precision, targeting disease like never before. Anthony's journey through biotech is as impressive as it is inspiring. He previously served as president and CEO of Empire Genomics and led the stem cell and regenerative medicine franchise at Thermo Fisher. With a foundation in biology and an MBA from Manchester Business School, he brings both scientific rigor, ethical purpose, and practicality to everything he touches. Anthony's impact doesn't stop at the lab. He's a passionate advocate for STEM education and community development, working to open doors for the next generation of innovators and leaders. Get ready for a conversation that blends science, strategy, and heart, because Anthony Johnson is not just building companies. He's building a future. The conversation goes deep into entrepreneurship, biotech, leadership, and life, and I've been looking forward to this one for quite a while. So, Anthony, welcome, and let's dive in.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
So, Anthony, you've got this philosophy around risk profiles, not just in business, but in life. So where did that start for you?
Yeah, I think it probably started early on in my life base, right? It's really just understanding, as you understand, frankly, your risk profile, it helps you understand others and how they react and interact in different situations, right? So for me, it's always been about understanding and trying to challenge some of those internal fears that we all have, right? We all face. And I think in terms of business and in life, if you really understand what those parameters are, it then allows you to try to make ways to correct them and I think just deal with them in different situations. So for me, understanding my personal risk profile and continually challenging it is one thing that I always do in my life.
Interesting. So how do you bring that concept and that philosophy into leading a team? Because not everyone has the same risk appetite. So when you, as the CEO, how do you bring that into leadership? Just curious.
Yeah, no, think about it, right? So, I mean, in terms of, I'll give you a couple of examples, but like starting a company, when you're starting a company, you just have so many different parameters that are either uncontrollable or unknown. And so that lends itself to a lot of risk for the untrained mind or unexperienced, let's say, leader. In terms of me personally, what I do is it allows me then to just start breaking things down into very, I would call it either microscopic or like engineering sort of principles, right? And so you understand what you can control and the rest you kind of put to the side. And so if you think back kind of as an example of kind of running with the bulls, it seems crazy at the start, but really what it's all about is there is approximately 1,000 yards, right, that you have to run. And it's from the beginning where the bulls start into the arena. And you have, like I said, these 10 or so thousand people. You have these cobblestones. It's at 8 o'clock in the morning. You've been drinking all night long this drink called Cali Mocho, right? Which is Coca-Cola and red wine and these big old steins. And so you might say, okay, well, why do this and what can you control? Well, what you can control is the following. You can stop drinking around 3 o'clock in the morning so you're sober by 8 o'clock when the Bulls run. Two, you can walk the entire length, right? So I walked the entire length of that 1,000 yards several times to understand where could you get off, right? So, I mean, there's a few places where you're totally trapped. And you got to make it past there so you don't get obviously trapped in there. And then there's also these kind of what I would call these danger zones, right? There's a danger zone where the Bulls have to make this sharp 90-degree turn. And I don't know if you know, but on cobblestones and with hooved feet, they don't stop very well. So they tend to slide. And that's where you have the most injuries. And so what I did was prepare myself to understand, hey, Anthony, when you're getting started, here's the point you have to get off in order to be safe. And once the Bulls pass you, then you have kind of a sigh of relief based, right? You can kind of enjoy the rest of the run. And so it's calculated risk, right? And so in terms of business, when you think about it, you're starting from scratch, as we did here in Kodikaz, and you're starting with a novel technology. You're starting with a leading researcher, a guy by the name of Dr. Leon Bernal, Ms. Rai, who's an expert in hematology, but has never started a business before. And you're working on a concept that prior to our starting it never existed. And so what do? Then you start creating a thesis. You start understanding what are some of the key principles you need to both get investment, right, and to understand, does this technology work? And then once you have all that in place, it really is all about kind of blocking and tackling and building.
Yeah.
And that's really understanding how do you create a product and what does that product need to look like?
I'm just curious. Well, two questions. First question is that initial phase where you're building out thesis, you're kind of exploring the concepts. How long did that in general take from like, oh, I've got an idea to let's start a company?
Yeah, so so this one actually took literally the gestational period was about probably 5 years, right? And that 5 years was from, hey, at the very beginning, Leon saying, I have an idea and I want to kind of work on it to really getting to the point where we had enough data to be able to say, you know what, there may be something here. So that 5 year period was really going through understanding a bit all science, right? Very, very little around kind of the business aspect, but just pure science and understanding what you have. And then from there, you can accelerate pretty quickly. Now, I'll give you an example, right? So Nathan, this is the funny part about it. A lot of times when you start a business, especially first-time founders, they spend a lot of time on the creative stuff, like naming, basically, right? And things along those lines. Now I know to kind of fast track that because the name is not that important. It really is about kind of the product, the idea, and the nuts and bolts behind the science.
Yeah. Second question is, what was the name of that drink again? Coke and red wine?
Cali Mocho. So Cali Mocho. It's a big stein, and it's only in that area of northern Spain, right in the Basque Country, and it's literally half and half red wine. So obviously, northern Spain is known for their red wines and Coca-Cola. And
wow! Well, I'm glad it's Coca-Cola and not Pepsi. So I'm from ATL, so you got to do Coca-Cola.
Exactly.
Man, I've never ever heard of red wine and Coke being mixed. So now I'm gonna have to go explore.
You have to.
Well, let's talk about you before we deep dive into Kodikaz. Maybe just tell us. So you've been in Fortune 500s. You're scaling something somewhat from scratch. You yourself and Leon as partners. What's been the hardest mind shift going from corporate America, somewhat secure role, into total opposite?
Yeah. The mind shift is different, I think, from two reasons. First, I would say I was incredibly privileged, right, to start off in corporate America, because what corporate America gives you, or provided me at least, was a foundation, right? A lot of structure, a lot of process. And that's something that, when applied correctly in a startup situation, right, allows you to accelerate and to really scale. And so I think that what it did for me was that corporate America gave me the structure, it gave me the understanding the process. And then when I took and started a business, I wasn't just kind of blindly kind of working from scratch, right? I really had a template I was working towards, and I can understand that upon certain milestones, here's what the business need to look like. The difference, I would say, between an early stage company and corporate America is, in corporate America, you take a lot of meetings, I think, for the sake of meetings, right? They may not be required for your job, but they're required for someone's job, so you have to do it. Right? And sometimes they feel like you're wasting your time. It's the exact opposite when you're starting from scratch. When you're starting from scratch, you're trying to fill your calendar up, and you're trying to figure out what is meaningful, what makes sense. And so it's this actually early on in the founding, this intrepidation that you fear like, if I'm not meeting and working 40 hours a day, basically, right, then I'm not doing enough to move the business forward. And so what I've learned kind of over time is that having that space to breathe, having that space to
Yeah.
really think is critically important. I think that's what early stage allows me and has allowed others to do.
Yeah. How long have you been in that phase of your life in terms of, leaving corporate America? Because Kodikaz, I don't think is your first, is it?
No, so this is my second startup, and I've advised and invested in many others, right? But I would say that in terms of the balance, I probably did about 10 years in corporate America, and now I've done about 20 years or so, right, in kind of that startup early stage environment. I guess the blessing again of my career is that I've always been involved in innovative technologies, right? So when I was at
Yeah.
Invitrogen or Thermo Fisher, the benefit of that one is that I was able to do what we call kind of entrepreneurship, right? So I took that
Hmm.
big behemoth of assets and was able to create ways for us to do direct investment in startups, right? To look at ways to actually do joint ventures. And so it set me up perfectly for what I do today.
Interesting. So let's talk about Kodikaz.
Okay.
I don't think a lot of our listeners know who Kodikaz is. It's not a brand name yet. But tell us in your words, and obviously, for those of us who don't speak the medical terminology that you do and your colleagues do, what does the company do?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think it's quite simple. If you look at it, so we're a targeted cancer therapeutic company. People say, what does that mean? Well, in the case of cancer, we've heard probably many times before that people die more often than not from the cure as opposed to the disease, right? Because these drugs we give people are very toxic, these chemotherapeutic agents. And so what we do at Kodikaz is we're able to take those chemotherapeutic agents, bind them with our targeted platform that we call zip codes, which are these DNA molecules that are specific for cancer cells, and make sure now that those drugs only go to the cancer cell of interest, not to the normal cells. So what do you get
Okay.
at the end of the day? You get a drug that is very effective without the side effects. And so I tell people all the time that we're like kind of a good analogy is we're like the Uber, if you will, right, of cancer therapy, and that we are delivering cancer therapy to
Yeah.
a specific kind of address.
That's really cool. I love that analogy, Uber for medicine, and so that's a really good way to put it because today, at least from my limited knowledge with cancer medicine, is if the medicine is pretty good in terms of killing the cancer cells, but the problem is it kills good things too.
Yeah.
So essentially, what Kodikaz has figured out is how do we deliver this strong medicine directly to the cancer cell so that it doesn't destroy the rest of the patient's healthy areas. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I think it's going to revolutionize cancer therapy as we know it, right, and disease management. I mean, I think to your point, it really is about can we keep patients on these therapies much longer? And if we can reduce those side effects, right, it allows people to have a much better quality of life and hopefully eradicate the disease.
Okay, so Anthony, that's let's talk a little bit about you as a leader in the world of Kodikaz. So if someone who's not in that world were to shadow you for a week, what part of the founder's journey you think would surprise them the most?
We spend a lot of time, and the real crux of the matter of what we do is all about communication, right? So
Yeah,
a lot of times doing PowerPoints, doing one pagers, and then communicating to your various either vendors or suppliers to make sure that the experiments stay on track, to make sure that the data is documented accordingly, and just to make sure that from a standpoint of the key timelines and milestones, that you're not falling behind schedule, right? And
yeah,
so that's what we spend an awful lot of time on. And then I think some of the things that probably would surprise people is because we work in cancer therapy, there's something in the news virtually every day around a new treatment, some new
yeah.
cure, basically, right? And so you're spending a lot of time trying to educate people that um, what they just read either is probably not ready for prime time, and some of this is a lot of kind of smoke and mirrors. And on the other side is some of these therapies you're seeing that are coming to the market today, they've been in development for 11 years, right? And we're kind of a 4 or so year old company, and so give us time and we'll be there as well.
Yeah. I'm just curious for Kodikaz, and I can tell you one of the things that surprised me just by spending a little bit of time with you, learning about your journey in this organization is, I mean, 5 years in, and it's still not making money, but it's also planned that way. That to me was okay. This is not this a startup in my mind is all right. Let's start a business, and then by year one we're breaking even, and by year two we're running with the money like you're running with the bulls. So talk to me a little bit about so that others can understand that this founder's journey isn't about just turning on a revenue stream real fast. This cancer research stuff takes time, and what that timeline and expectation is for some of these things.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think two things. So one, it takes time. So I mean, the typical time period to bring a therapeutic to market, right, is anywhere from 7 to 10 years, right, and that's kind of on
Wow.
the median.
Oh my
So that
gosh.
it takes time, right? Because it really is about safety. It's about
Yeah.
first do no harm. So making sure that whatever you're going to put into humans, that it's been well thought out, well characterized, and validated, so that you can minimize the risk for a
Yeah.
patient that takes an experimental therapy. The other side, though, is important, and it's a great question because honestly, things are changing dramatically in our field, right? Obviously, like other industries, artificial intelligence is starting to make its way right into the life science and the biotech atmosphere, or if your arena. And what that's going to do is dramatically accelerate, we believe, a lot of the development. It may take it from a 10-year average time period to get a drug on the market, right, to, let's say, 5 or 4 years, right? And so
Yeah.
that can accelerate things. But the other aspect, Nathan, that I think is important to understand too, is that in our industry, it really is about like intellectual property and protecting your rights. And so we have this extremely novel new way of doing delivery. And what you don't want to do is kind of shoot yourself in the foot by signing partnership agreements or licensing agreements, right? And either underpricing it, giving away a large portion of your patent franchise. And so we're trying to be very methodical about it as well. So I think from a standpoint of generating revenue, it's a hybrid approach. We want to first develop our own therapies, understand a lot about the kind of technology and how it works. And then
Yeah.
simultaneously, we're looking at partnering agreements with some biotech and some pharma groups that will add
Yeah.
revenue base, right? But allow us to do so in a controlled manner.
10 years is just an extreme amount of patience.
And a
So
lot of
you
cash.
are a
Yeah.
man of patience. But I do love what you said about the artificial intelligence. I mean, it is, even though it's a buzzword, it really is true. It can cut time down almost half. I mean, at NRI, we're working with healthcare agencies, as you know,
Mm-hmm.
and manufacturing agencies to, either drive efficiencies into operations or have faster time to market or more differentiated products. And I think that this whole biotech industry is very intriguing to me because it really truly is about getting things done faster, right? It is about getting to market faster or getting research and analysis done or getting to human trials faster. So it's very intriguing. But with that amount of patience that you have to be in your world, how do you stay energized and where it's constant milestone based? So personally, how do you stay energized?
Yeah, I think it's two things, right? I think one is celebrating the wins, right? So there are a lot of wins along the way in terms of science that works out or experiments that go exactly according to plan. There's what you see kind of in the animal models. There's what you see, right, as you're talking to other leaders in the field. But the real thing is focusing on that North Star, which is the patient, right? And thinking about
Yeah.
the issues that and all of the ways that cancer can riddle a family, right, and a patient,
Yeah.
and trying to find ways to solve that. And I think that for us, it's that kind of North Star and that goal that really motivates me. And then I instill that into the team that at the end of the day, what we're doing is to help treat that cancer patient, right, that may be your family member one day.
Yeah. I mean, I think outside of the financials of what you're doing, you have to have a passion for this or, background. Um, you know, I think you and I have chatted a little bit in our previous conversations. My grandfather passed away of cancer maybe 15 years ago, and it was myeloma, which is one of the things that Kodikaz is looking at, is on the docket or roadmap for delivering directly to the myeloma cells, which is very difficult because I believe myeloma is basically in the bloodstream,
Yeah.
right? Is that so? Can you kind of speak a little bit about what types of cancers you guys have on as top priorities to go after?
Yeah, I mean, myeloma is actually our first one we're looking at, right? That's a blood-based cancer. So it's these malignant cells that kind of circulate throughout the bone marrow and then unfortunately affect organs, basically, right? And it's a lethal disease that, though it right now the average lifespan has increased dramatically over time with therapies we have on the market, ultimately it is a disease that everyone succumbs to, right? Who has it, and
Yeah.
so therefore it's a huge unmet medical need. In addition to that one, the other area we're looking at right now are these solid tumor areas like pancreatic cancer, colorectal, as well as lung cancer. And the big
Mm.
challenge with those is these are um, cancers of the organs, and they develop these large malignant masses, right, that are very hard to penetrate. And what we've been finding is that our technology is able to actually penetrate inside that tumor. So you're not just killing the outside, but really getting to the heart of the matter of trying to kill the entire tumor. And so
Yeah.
we have a robust pipeline, right? We'll keep working on it. But I think the exciting part about where we're at is this first kind of 4 years has really been about just showing what the platform can do, right? So we've shown proof of principle in myeloma, pancreatic cancer, colorectal, and non-small cell lung
Yeah.
cancer. But we're going to develop an entire library. And if you can envision every cancer cell, we think we can actually create a zip code for every cancer cell, which means that then we can deliver a variety of drugs to all these cancer cells.
This is fantastic stuff that you guys are doing. I'm just every time we talk, I learn something new, and it just kind of blows my mind at how fast technology is moving and just how far we've come, but also how far we still have to go. Right, the
Yeah.
journey is still there.
But you know what
Um,
it is? It's funny. The funny part about it, Nathan, is like when I started in this whole field of kind of biotechnology, I was working in stem cell therapies, right? So this goes back to the
yeah,
first Bush administration, and we had all kind of restrictions, and that was now going back north of probably 30 years, right? And we're just starting to see a lot of these stem cells finally become
yeah,
treatments, right? You hear about Kobe Bryant or a bunch of athletes, right, getting this PRP therapy, right? That's all
yeah,
kind of from that research that took place 30 years ago. And what we're seeing now is there's a pent up amount of research we've been doing this past 30 years that now with new technology, whether it be AI, machine learning, or some of the things we're doing in genomics that are going to allow us to really, I think, accelerate the speed at which a lot of these innovations now will come into patients' hands, clinicians' hands. And it's going to be where it normally would take probably 20 or 30 years from the idea to concept. If you look at like CRISPR technologies, right, this is kind of gene editing you've heard, right? The
yeah.
um, Dr. Dowden won the Nobel laureate from it. And
Mm,
within 10 years, we're now in the first patient. And just past a couple of weeks ago, we had a patient in University of Philadelphia, or CHOP, that actually was
okay.
cured of a genetic disease using CRISPR. So, I mean, it's
Wow.
there.
That's fantastic.
Mhm.
That's fantastic. I want to take it up a notch. Not, and I don't want to talk about your amazing barber because apparently we share the same barber. I do want to talk about the bigger picture, though. I want to talk a little bit about AI, artificial intelligence, biotech, and regulation. What's the intersection in your mind, specifically around artificial intelligence and biotechnology research?
Man, that's so fitting. Like we literally so obviously we have a new administration here in the U.S., right? And the FDA, which regulates all of our therapies in this space in the U.S., just
Mm,
created a mandate that said they're going to use artificial intelligence and their own internally developed, I think, along with OpenAI's Chat GPT, to rapidly evaluate new therapies, right? And they're going to do so in a way that kind of accelerates from what used to take normally years to get kind of that evaluation and approval to enter the clinic down into months, right? So
wow.
we are right now at the intersection, and it's dramatically accelerating what we're there. I just read, for instance, another publication um, just this week that showed a chat model versus clinicians is able to diagnose patients with 80% greater confidence, right? In 20% of the time.
Wow.
It kind of flips that Pareto principle on its head, basically, right? And so AI is definitely making its way into the healthcare system, right? Definitely into biotech. And there's a lot of, as you can imagine, right, this field we're in, again, because of the concern for patients and safety,
Yeah.
it's a very conservative space. But I think the
Yeah.
technology, you can't actually deny it, right? The to your point, efficiencies that we can see in things like supply chain, the efficiency we can see in understanding kind of new diseases and diagnosing them and different ways to treat them. It's just that the computer is obviously in these models. We have all this data that now can be kind of assimilated and used in a way to help
Yeah.
us accelerate what
Yeah.
we're doing in our field.
Yeah. And you kind of alluded a little bit to artificial intelligence and innovative technology, how in the past it's really been good at, you know, creating and doing the research, but now it's starting to move from a bigger picture to actually delivering healthcare.
Yeah.
And so I see that kind of as a big shift. Is that kind of your perspective as well?
Yes, that definitely is my perspective that you're seeing this shift and you're seeing, I mean, it started to kind of creep in some of these areas that were more, I would call them mundane. So the
Yeah.
operations, right? The behind the office sort of aspects. But now it's moving into the forefront. You're seeing kind of the chats at everything from qualifying patients before they come in for visits,
Yeah.
notifying them of issues they may have with some of their test results. And I'm curious at NRI, how are you guys thinking about it from a healthcare perspective, right? And what are you seeing? Because I mean, I see it obviously kind of every day, but
Yeah.
you guys are some of the experts right along these big models and different industries too. So I'm curious how you guys
Yeah.
are doing it.
Yeah. And I think we're still just scratching the surface too. I think some of the areas where we're exploring artificial intelligence with a lot of the different, not just payers, but providers, is patient interaction. There's a lot of patient interaction used for artificial intelligence. And that's not just from a customer care perspective. That's also just, there's a lot of, for example, the data is, we call it unstructured data, right? So
Yeah.
there's structured data, there's unstructured. There's a lot of the unstructured data that sits out there in the healthcare space just because it's been going hundreds of years of
Yeah.
just records, for example, paperwork. Working with healthcare organizations to better streamline and consolidate and make it easier for patients to access their healthcare records and understand them.
Yeah.
If you told me today without AI, like what are your where are your healthcare records? I would have no clue, to be honest with you.
True.
Where, when was the last time you had a shot for polio or whatever? So I wouldn't be able to tell you. I'd have to go figure it out. So we're working to figure out how to A, make the patient experience better, and then B, as we kind of discussed, is one of the organizations, one of the larger healthcare organizations in Northern Ohio that we're working with is operational time on the floor. So nurses and doctors are an extremely critical role, life and limb. And so every minute or even second that they can get back from having to do a manual task or having to do a non-valuable added task, such as delivering a prescription to the pharmacy,
Yeah.
right? If we can make that more automated, more fast, it saves essentially patients' lives. So I do see it moving at a rapid pace, more and more towards the patient and not just back end research and development. So
Yeah.
that's kind of exciting.
No, it's super exciting. And you think about it, right, from a standpoint of we don't have enough healthcare practitioners, right? So there's not enough physicians to go around, particularly obviously in areas like rural areas. And I think
Yeah.
that AI is going to help. And I read an article, it was an article that came out the other day talking about that AI should actually make physicians, to your point, more efficient as
Yeah.
opposed to removing them from the system, right? The goal is not to remove, I think, the human interaction, it's to make that human interaction that much more important. And I think that that's what AI is going to help with. There's another area that I'm excited about too, and these are some of the mundane things people don't think about. One of the
Yeah.
big issues in healthcare, particularly like in elderly populations, is loneliness, right? So it leads to
Mm.
depression and a lot of disease exacerbation.
Yeah.
Reading an article just yesterday in the Wall Street Journal, and it was asking you to identify, for instance, the videos that were created via AI and which ones were native, right, authentic videos. And it was very hard
Yeah.
to tell the difference between the two. And I use that to use an example of these chats and ways to actually interact with elderly who may not be around family, but to do so through AI bots and things like that that can actually impersonate, if you will, right, some real people is a way that AI can be, I think, very well utilized, right, as a healthcare intervention that has very little risk.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting, actually. Not a lot of people think of it like that, but you're exactly right. Let's lean into that concept of being lonely and talk about you for a second. So you're a pre-revenue CEO, as we
Uh-huh.
discussed. That to me sounds pretty darn lonely. So you're not just making big decisions, you're answering to dozens of different groups that are, stakeholders or, financiers or, research and development, government. What's that like?
Yeah, I mean, it's controlled mayhem. No, seriously, it is. It's one of these things where, I mean, they say kind of the CEO role is a lonely role, and I'll be honest with you. I think early on in my career, I would agree with that. Now I have a lot of different. I mean, I've built a great team, and so I have a lot of different resources that I can rely upon for advice or for guidance. I have fellow colleagues that run corporations of a similar size or even larger sizes, right, that enable me to really kind of pick their brain and troubleshoot where I have issues, whether it be with employees, with partners, with the board, or even investors. And I think that the role of the CEO is really one more so of like a referee as opposed to kind of this head coach sort of analogy, right? I think that
Interesting.
what your my job is really is to make sure people stay on the field and play within the rules, and to
Wow.
make sure the ball kind of keeps moving down towards the goalpost base, right? And I think that's what a good referee does.
Wow. That's super. I love that. I love that metaphor, Anthony. So that's can you talk a little bit about as you're playing that role for the game you're in and for the team you're on, when things get really loud, because you're not always the good guy, especially as the CEO.
Mm-hmm.
How do you keep your mind clear? How do you manage a situation when things start to get really loud as the CEO?
Yeah, I think I resort back to kind of those experiences of like running with the bulls, basically, right, or bungee jumping, all these kind of crazy things you do where it's very risky, right, and things are unknown, and it comes down to communication and it comes down to a plan. And so when things, I mean, think about it right now, right? I'll give you some prime examples. These tariffs that you're hearing about, right, and some of these issues with certain countries that we can or can't deal with, and certain things that are of national security. Well, in the
Yeah.
case of cancer therapy and genomics, some of this is considered a national security risk. Therefore, you can't do manufacturing in China, for example.
Mm,
China typically manufactures like 95% of the drugs that we use, right, in this field are manufactured in China. And so you got to figure out a way to kind of change that manufacturing plan because it's no longer an option, right? And so
yeah.
that creates consternation around the team, around investors. And I think the part that helps me to kind of steel my nerves is that one, we're not the only ones going through this. And two, I think that given enough time, enough creativity, right, and enough expertise around the team, you'll figure out a solution. And so for me,
Yeah.
that whole concept of like objects in the mirror, right, are larger than they ever appear. I think
Hmm.
that time allows these big problems become smaller every single day you get past them, right? So it's just giving yourself time to breathe, time to relax, and time to be a good
Yeah.
communicator.
Yeah. In our last podcast, we had Shane Sweeney, who's the SVP for technology at FanDuel. He actually talked about how to tackle big challenges. He says he actually has to step back and look at it in chunks
Yeah.
and tackle them in chunks. And that's the way a leader can better keep vision on the bigger is, look at the small wins and then work towards the goal. So um, I'm curious, as the CEO of this a massively impactful organization, has your definition of success changed over the years? And if so, how?
Wow, that's a great question. And honestly, though it should, right? With perspective, it should. My definition of success remains the same. And I'm one of these kind of, I don't believe in like second place or like, you know what I'm saying, bronze and silver are good medals. I think that you don't win silver, you lose gold. And so for me, it really is about the end point. And I tell people there's some moral
Yeah.
victories we have along the way. We're doing some great things with the science, but ultimately we'll be a success when this is in patients, right? And is actually changing lives. I think along the way, don't get me wrong, there are a lot of things that we need to be proud of, and we are as an organization, right? We built a great team here. We've been able to accomplish an awful lot in a short period of time, being very efficient stewards of capital, right? And the resource we have available to us. But ultimately, it really is about helping the patients. And I think with that comes obviously the financial rewards for our investors and everyone along the way. But I'm not unfortunately, I'm not one of these people, right, that can think through and say, hey, here are some of the small things that for me, at least personally, right, are kind of rewarding, I would say.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to put it. For me, when I wake up in the mornings, success actually looks different every day.
True.
To me, it's there is long-term success, but things are constantly shifting, and so
Yeah.
you have to adapt. I think
Mhm.
as a leader, as you approach, and it doesn't have to be big shifts. It could
Yeah.
be like a 0.5% here and there, but over time, I know that my success in this role at NRI has shifted as I've learned more and as external factors have hit the ship. So it's like, okay, now what's success look like today? And obviously, the long-term goal is what we make it as our mission.
Yeah, not that I'm not satisfied, right? But I don't lose sight of what the ultimate goal is, right, in terms of winning the game. But I
Yeah.
learned I had a stressful time back in my like Life Tech Thermo Fisher days where
Mm.
it was just, to your point, I was struggling to understand what success was, right? And really struggling with the fact that I wasn't where I wanted the corporation to be, nor my
Yeah.
role in that corporation. And so a good colleague told me about a book called Start From Where You Are, right? And this is
Mm.
a Buddhist book. And
Yeah.
regardless of kind of what your religion is and your thesis on life, it helped me to understand that though my mission, for instance, is to get to this endpoint, I need to be comfortable where I'm at today and keep working, continually to get better each day. So to that end, the goalpost is the goalpost, basically, right?
Yeah.
And you definitely celebrate the first downs and the field goals and everything else. But at the end of the day, you want to win the game.
I love that. That's really good. I'll have to check that book out.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for that. So let's move into the last segment, fast takes. Are you ready?
Uh-oh. I'm
Here we
nervous.
go. All right. If they were to create a cocktail in your honor, what is in the Anthony Johnson?
Ooh, it has to be a novel cocktail, or can I use one, you know what I'm saying, that's a fan favorite?
You decide.
All right, all right. I would call it the Naked and Famous. It has a little bit of mezcal,
Hey,
a fruit
yellow
drink,
chartreuse.
a little yellow chartreuse. You sound like you know this drink here.
I know this one.
So listen, this one I think kind of describes me, base, right? I think it's kind of, and why you say so. It's an effective drink, right? It's
Yeah,
efficient, a good use of resources, and more importantly, I think it's a fun drink, right? And so I
it
think to
is
me,
fun.
that's what Naked and Famous is.
Yeah, and it's funny because it's rare sometimes people don't have the yellow chartreuse because it's made by monks,
Exactly.
which kind of it surprised me. So, all right, next question. What's your favorite guilty pleasure app or gadget?
Ooh, my favorite guilty pleasure app or gadget. Right now, unfortunately, I'm gonna have to say it's probably a combination of YouTube and these short form videos, right? I consume an
Yeah,
awful lot of information and it's actually helpful, though hurtful at times, right? But helpful to get kind of information in very short bites, basically, right? And kind of in
yeah,
a creative sort of manner. So I think that's one of my big diversions, if you will, and guilty pleasures.
that's good. All right, next question. What is a fictional tech leader who mirrors your vibe? Doesn't have to be tech leader, but a fictional leader that mirrors your vibe.
So a fake leader. A fake leader?
Fictional, Superman, that type of,
Oh, gotcha, my bad. Okay, gotcha. Okay,
think
so
fictional. Could be Doctor Strange or
ooh. I would say, interesting. I would say probably, and it's going to sound cliche, I would say Tony Stark's.
I
Right?
thought
I
that was
was right,
coming.
right. I mean, I mean, not. Well, listen, he's a scientist, so he's very creative, right? He's
Yeah,
obviously dapper. He loves to dress and kind of bon vivant around parties and everything else, and he gets down to business, get things done, basically, right? So I think that
yeah.
that would probably be my superhero.
I can see that fit for you. Big vision thinker, super smart, super intelligent. So I
I'm like
align to
on
what you're
that,
saying
yeah.
there. Yeah.
I
All
take him
right.
where I can get him.
All right. You get an all access pass to one event. Where are you going and who's coming with you?
Wow, wow. So I get an all access pass to one event. It's going to be a fictional event, but in the future, hopefully. It'll
Okay.
be the Knicks against the Lakers, game 7
Wow.
of the NBA championships. And I'm going to bring you along with me, basically, right?
Hey,
Along with, we're going to bring Carmelo Anthony as well. So we have a
there you
nice,
go.
I'm saying, guide to give us some Knicks culture.
So I assume you're a Knicks fan.
I'm a Knicks fan.
I figured that much. And I would wear my Atlanta Hawks jersey, so you might not want to bring me. All right, last question. Walk-in theme song. If your employees, your partner Leon were to pick one song, what would it be for your walk-in song?
I think it would have to be, I'm going to go back and give you a throwback. It would be Superfly.
What?
Yeah, exactly. I like this
Okay.
song. That's a good song, right? That's kind of
That's
it's
a good
jazzy,
one.
right? It's say every superhero should have a theme song. That would be my theme song.
I can see that. Superfly. I love it. Anthony Johnson, thank you so much once again. This was an incredible conversation. You clearly are passionate about what you do. Kodikaz and your mission has an impact or will have an impact to the world once you guys accomplish the success you're looking for. And I know it's there. We've had multiple conversations around what your team and what your organization is doing. I hope this podcast, inspires others that are looking to, step out of their comfort and risk zone and go after it, because you can change the world just like you're doing. So it's a powerful reminder of what happens when we stretch our risk profile with intention. So that's it for this episode of Parallel Perspectives. Until next time, keep building boldly. Thanks again.